I parked the car outside our house, but something felt off. Not in the paranoid, maybe I forgot to turn the stove off way. No, this was different. It was the kind of wrong that settles deep in your gut, twisting tight, refusing to let go. The lights were out except for the dim glow coming from the living room window. At this hour, she should have been in bed, asleep, but something told me she wasn't. I stepped out, shutting the car door quietly. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me already knew what I was about to walk into, and I wasn't ready to let it hear me coming. The front door was unlocked. Strange. She always locked it. Always reminded me to double-check. I stepped inside, and immediately I heard it. Voices. A man's voice. Low. Confident. Then hers. A soft laugh. The kind she hadn't used with me in years. My feet moved before my brain could catch up. I rounded the corner, and there she was, sitting too close to him on the couch. A man I'd never seen before, wearing a tight black t-shirt, muscular arms stretched across the backrest like he owned the place. Like he owned her. She looked up at me. No guilt. No shock. Just mild annoyance. Oh, you're home. That's it. That's all she said. I stared at them, my mind trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he stretched, cracking his knuckles, and gave me a smirk. Didn't expect you back so soon, man. Man. He called me man. Like I was some random guy crashing their little date. What the hell is this? My voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that barely holds back something violent underneath. She sighed like I was exhausting her. Can we not do this right now? Not do what? I took a step closer. The guy didn't flinch. Walk into my house and find my wife cozying up to some dude? She rolled her eyes. God, don't be dramatic. 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 I looked at the guy again. He was watching me, relaxed, like he wasn't the problem here. Like I was. Be a good boy and run before I hurt you, he said, voice smooth and cocky. Her lips curled into a smirk. She liked this. She liked him saying that to me. His body tensed just slightly, muscles flexing as he leaned forward. Leave now or in an ambulance? Something in me snapped. Option C, I said without hesitation. I show why 10 years of combat training beats steroids. I didn't give him time to process. My fist connected with his jaw before he even saw it coming. His head snapped back, body lurching sideways off the couch. Turns out all those hours he spent curling dumbbells did nothing to stop a Marine's left hook. He hit the floor hard. A heavy, satisfying thud. For a split second, there was nothing but silence, no cocky threats, no smug grins, just the stunned realization that muscles didn't make a man invincible. Then he groaned, rolling onto his side, his hand clutching his jaw like it had just betrayed him. Oh my God, she shrieked, scrambling off the couch. But not towards me. No. She dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her hands to his face like I was the villain here. Are you okay, baby? Baby. I felt something in my chest twist so violently it almost took the air out of my lungs. He coughed, shaking his head, and for a second I thought he'd stay down. Take the loss. But then he pushed himself up, stumbling, that cocky smirk nowhere to be found. He looked at me again, but differently this time. He wasn't seeing some good boy who could be scared off. He was seeing the problem. And I wanted him to. She stood between us, one hand still on his chest, the other outstretched like she actually thought I might attack again. What the hell is wrong with you? She snapped at me. I let out a short laugh, but there was nothing funny about it. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I pointed at him. There's a stranger in my house with his hands all over my wife, and I'm the problem? He's not a stranger. My stomach twisted. No. She hesitated. That half-second pause. The way her lips parted just slightly, like she was debating how much of the truth to let slip. I already knew. How long? I asked. She crossed her arms. That doesn't matter. That doesn't... I cut myself off, shaking my head. I turned my attention to him. He was watching me like I was an unpredictable animal, waiting to see if I'd pounce again. How long? He hesitated too, but only for a second. Then he smirked again, wiping his lip where blood was starting to pool. A while. A while. The room felt too small. The walls too close. The air too thick. She saw the way my fists clenched, and for the first time, something flickered in her expression. A sliver of guilt? No, annoyance. like I was ruining her night. "I think you should go," she said. I stared at her, waiting for her to correct herself, waiting for the moment she'd snap out of this insanity. She didn't. "You're serious," I said. She scoffed. "You just assaulted someone in our house, our house." My voice cracked with something I couldn't control. I looked at the man standing beside her. "You mean his house now?" Silence. And that's when I knew. That's when I knew it wasn't just some mistake. Some stupid, one-time thing she regretted. She had already chosen him. I took a slow breath, trying to control the shaking in my hands. I had two choices. Stay and fight for something that was already dead, or walk away before I did something I couldn't take back. I chose the latter. For now. I stepped back, my pulse pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. The walls, the floor, even the air itself felt unreal, like I'd slipped into some twisted nightmare where up was down, right was wrong, and my wife stood beside another man, calling me the problem. She was still watching me, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin, irritated line, like I was some inconvenience, some drama she didn't want to deal with. "Go cool off," she said, flicking her hand towards the door like she was shooing a stray dog. "Cool off. Cool off." I let out a slow, bitter laugh. "You really don't give a damn, do you?" She exhaled through her nose. "God, you're so predictable. You always want some big emotional scene. Some proof that I'm heartbroken." Newsflash. She shrugged. "I'm not." I felt something inside me snap. She wanted me to lose control. She wanted me to scream, to break, to lash out, so she could paint me as the unstable, pathetic husband who just couldn't handle the truth. No, I wasn't giving her that. Instead, I smiled. A slow, knowing smile that made something flicker in her expression. Then I turned my attention to him. He was still rubbing his jaw, still sizing me up like he was trying to figure out if another hit was coming. "You're awfully quiet now," I said. "What happened to the tough guy act?" His nostrils flared. He rolled his shoulders, taking a slow step forward. "You got a lucky shot." I tilted my head. "Want to test that theory?" His fists clenched. But before he could do anything stupid, she placed a hand on his chest, stopping him. "Babe," she murmured, soft, soothing. That single word stung more than my knuckles. She turned back to me. "Just leave, okay? Be an adult about this." "An adult?" I repeated, rolling the words over my tongue. "Right? Because screwing around behind my back was so mature." She smirked. "Worked out pretty well for me. I should have left right then. Should have turned around and walked away like a man with dignity. But I wasn't done yet." I glanced around the room. The couch, the TV, the framed wedding photos still hanging on the walls, mocking me. My gaze landed on the coffee table, on his car keys sitting right next to her phone. A thought sparked. Terrible, brilliant thought. I walked over and picked up his keys. "Hey!" he barked, taking another step. I tossed them into the air, caught them, then grinned. "Nice car, right?" His eyes darkened. "Put those down." I ignored him, turning them over in my hand. Audi logo. Brand new. Probably his pride and joy. I looked at her. "He let you drive it yet?" Her lips curled. "Jealous." I laughed. "Not at all." Then I chucked the keys hard right at the wall. They smacked against it, leaving a dent in the paint before clattering to the floor. "You psycho!" He lunged, but I was faster. I sidestepped, watching him stumble forward like an idiot, barely catching himself on the armrest. "You want to talk about being an adult?" I said, voice steady, eyes locked on hers. "You should have acted like one before you turned into this." I gestured at the two of them. "Enjoy your new life. Hope it's worth it." Then, without another word, I turned and walked out. But as I stepped outside into the cool night air, something in me knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The second I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face, but it did nothing to cool the fire raging inside me. My hands were still shaking, my breathing shallow, my mind spinning like a car skidding out of control. I had to get out of there. Fast. Before I turned around and did something I couldn't take back. But as I walked down the driveway, something caught my eye. His car. A brand new, jet black Audi parked right in my driveway. It sat there, pristine and perfect, like a goddamn trophy. Like some kind of monument to my humiliation. I stopped, stared at it, and a wicked, vengeful thought slid into my mind. I dug into my pocket, pulling out my own keyring. My fingers closed around the cool, sharp edge of my house key. A single, deep scratch along the driver's side door would be too easy. No. I wanted something better. I turned, heading for my truck. Climbed inside. Gripped the steering wheel. My reflection stared back at me in the rearview mirror. Eyes wild, jaw tight. A man at the edge of something dangerous. Then I threw the truck into reverse. The tires screeched as I slammed the gas. The truck shot backward, gaining speed, and then boom. Metal crunched, glass shattered, and my whole body jerked forward as the back of my truck plowed into the side of his precious Audi. For a second, everything was silent. Then the front door burst open. What the hell? His voice, high and panicked. I climbed out of my truck, surveying the damage. My bumper had caved in his driver's side door like a tin can. Deep, ugly dents stretched across the panel. The side mirror dangled uselessly. I let out a slow whistle. Damn. Would you look at that? His footsteps pounded toward me. Are you out of your mind? I turned to face him, calm, steady. Oops. His face turned red. His fists clenched at his sides. He looked ready to explode. I almost wanted him to. I'm calling the cops, he spat, pulling out his phone. I shrugged. Go ahead. I'll just tell them I was so shaken up after finding out my wife was screwing a stranger in my house that I lost control of my vehicle. I sighed, shaking my head. Terrible accident, really? His jaw worked. His fingers tightened around the phone. He knew I was right. She appeared behind him, barefoot on the cold pavement, arms crossed. She looked at the Audi, then at me, then let out a slow, dry laugh. Wow. Real mature. I turned to her. How's that for dramatic? Her expression didn't change. She just smirked, shaking her head. I knew you'd embarrass yourself. Embarrass myself. I felt a slow, dangerous smile spread across my face. Embarrass myself? I gestured at the wrecked car. No, sweetheart. This is me making sure you remember me every time he picks you up in that piece of scrap metal. I turned back to him. Oh, and just so we're clear, this was me being nice. He stared at me, breathing hard, fists still clenched. But he didn't move. Didn't say a word. Because deep down he knew if I really wanted to ruin his night, I could do a hell of a lot worse. Without another word, I climbed back into my truck, threw it into drive, and peeled out of the driveway, leaving them standing there in the wreckage. And as I disappeared down the street, my heart still pounding, my hands still shaking, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. I drove. No destination, no plan, just me and the open road, headlights cutting through the darkness. My pulse was still hammering, adrenaline still flooding my veins, but beneath all that rage, a cold, creeping realization slithered in. I had just walked away from my own house. Left my life behind like some outsider who didn't belong there anymore. And them? They were probably inside now, maybe laughing, maybe talking about how unhinged I was, how pathetic, how predictable. I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw ached. No, this wasn't how it ended. I pulled into an empty gas station parking lot, turned off the engine, and just sat there, gripping the wheel, forcing myself to think. I needed a plan. Divorce? That was the obvious answer. Get the hell out. Let them have each other, walk away with whatever dignity I had left. But the thought made my stomach turn. Not because I wanted her back, God, no. But because it felt like they were winning. Like I was just handing them the life I built. The home I paid for. The comfort they clearly had no shame indulging in. Not a chance. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and tapped a name I hadn't needed in years. The phone rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Bro, Nate, my oldest friend, my best man at the wedding, the guy who'd always had my back no matter what. Need a place to crash, I said. There was a pause. Then, tell me everything. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on his couch, a cold beer in my hand, spilling every last detail. By the time I finished, Nate was leaning forward, hands clasped, eyes dark with barely contained fury. She really kicked you out? His voice was low, dangerous. She thought she did. He let out a slow exhale. Man, I knew she was cold, but this. He shook his head. Unreal. I took a sip of beer, my grip tightening around the bottle. I'm not just walking away. Not yet. His eyes flicked to mine. What are you thinking? I leaned back, tapping my fingers against the glass. She thinks she's won, I said. Thinks I'll just roll over and let her and her steroid puppet take everything. Our house. My money. Nate nodded slowly. But you're not. A slow smirk pulled at the corner of my mouth. Not a chance in hell. I barely slept that night, my mind running 100 miles an hour. By morning, I had a plan. Step 1? Secure my assets. I called the bank, froze the joint accounts before she had a chance to drain them. Canceled the credit cards that had my name attached. Step 2? Legal backup. By noon, I was sitting across from a divorce lawyer laying it all out. The affair. The financials. The house. Good news, the lawyer said, flipping through some paperwork. Since you own the house before the marriage and her name isn't on the deed, she has no legal claim to it. I sat up straighter. Meaning? Meaning she has no right to kick you out. You own that house. I let out a slow breath, a grin creeping onto my face. Perfect. I pulled out my phone, dialed her number, and waited. She answered on the third ring. What? Calm. Steady. Controlled. You have 24 hours to get out of my house. Silence. Then a soft laugh. Oh, is that so? I leaned back in my chair, smiling. Yeah. See, I had a nice little chat with my lawyer, and turns out, you don't have a leg to stand on. Another pause. Then her voice dropped into something sickeningly sweet. Come on, don't be like this. You really want to drag this out, make it ugly? I laughed. Oh, sweetheart. You made it ugly the second you brought him into my house. She sighed, long and dramatic. I knew you'd be petty about this. I ignored the jab. 24 hours, I repeated. And if you're still there when I come back? I let the silence stretch. Let her wonder. Then I hung up. Nate grinned from across the table. Damn, man. I took another sip of beer, savoring the moment. Checkmate. The next 24 hours crawled by, but I didn't waste a second. While she was sitting in my house, probably fuming, probably plotting, I was making sure there wasn't a single crack in my plan. First, I called the utilities company. Had the electricity, water, and Wi-Fi scheduled for disconnection the following morning. Then I sent an email to my home security provider, changing the codes and removing her access. By the time I was done, she'd have no money, no power, no running water, and no way to weasel her way back in. She wanted a new life with him? Fine. But she wasn't living it under my roof. The next afternoon, I pulled up to the house with Nate in the passenger seat. Think she actually left? He asked, cracking his knuckles. I exhaled slowly. Nope. And sure enough, her car was still in the driveway. Figures. I stepped out, rolled my shoulders, and walked up the front steps. Nate followed, standing just behind me like a silent wall of backup. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Perfume. His cologne. The faint trace of something burned, like someone had tried to cook and failed miserably. Then I heard voices. Laughter. From the kitchen. I stepped inside, my footsteps slow, deliberate. When I rounded the corner, there they were. She was perched on the kitchen counter, legs swinging. He was leaning against the fridge, beer in hand. And they were laughing. Like this was their home. Like I was some guest interrupting them. She looked up, saw me, and, I swear to God, smirked. Oh, she said. You're early. Early? Like I was some delivery guy she hadn't been expecting yet. I took another step inside, felt Nate shift slightly behind me, and let my gaze flick to him. He was still holding the beer, but something about his posture changed. He was watching me, waiting. He remembered last time. Good. I met her gaze again. Time's up. She sighed. Oh, come on. Don't be so dramatic. I didn't respond. Just pulled out my phone, tapped a few buttons, and turned the screen to face her. It was a screenshot of an email. Electricity, water, and internet scheduled for termination. 5 a.m. tomorrow. Her smirk faltered. I tilted my head. So unless you're planning on showering with bottled water and cooking over candlelight, I'd suggest packing. She slid off the counter, arms crossed. You would do something this petty. No, I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket. Petty would be putting all your stuff on the curb and letting the neighborhood raccoons sort through it. I took a slow step forward, letting my voice drop. This is me being generous. Her lips parted, a retort locked and loaded, but before she could fire it off, he set his beer down a little too hard. You made your point, he said, voice tight. I turned to him. That's so? He clenched his jaw. Yeah. I took another slow, measured step, closing the distance between us. I could feel Nate tensing behind me, ready, waiting. Then I lowered my voice just enough that only he could hear me. You should have run when you had the chance. His Adam's apple bobbed. I smiled, then stepped back and clapped my hands. All right, sweetheart, I said, voice light again. You've got two options. You can walk out on your own, or you can explain to the cops why you're squatting in a house that isn't yours. Her eyes darkened. You wouldn't. I pulled my phone back out. Dialed the first number. Put it on speaker. 911, what's your emergency? Her face twisted. Then she turned on her heel and stormed down the hall, disappearing into the bedroom. A minute later, doors slammed, drawers yanked open, fabric rustled. She was packing. Nate chuckled under his breath. Damn, man. That was beautiful. I hung up the call before dispatch could ask any more questions. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. This was my house. And now finally it was mine again. She slammed through the house like a hurricane, yanking drawers open, tossing clothes into a bag with furious, jerky movements. Every now and then she'd mutter something under her breath, but I didn't bother asking her to repeat it. I didn't care. Her boyfriend stood by the door, arms crossed, jaw clenched. He wasn't talking anymore. Maybe because he knew nothing he said would change the fact that he was getting booted out of a house that was never his in the first place. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching. Enjoying. You're a real piece of work, she spat, stomping past me to grab something from the coffee table. I raised an eyebrow. Says the woman who thought she could turn my house into her love nest. She whirled around, finger pointing at my chest. You are so goddamn petty. I grinned. And yet, I'm not the one getting evicted. Her nostrils flared, but she turned away, muttering another string of curses under her breath as she zipped up her bag. Her boyfriend finally spoke. You could have handled this like a man. I laughed. Actually laughed. Like a man? Buddy, a real man doesn't need to sneak around with another guy's wife to feel important. His fists clenched. His entire body went rigid. But he didn't move. Didn't step forward. Because we both knew how that ended last time. Instead, he muttered something under his breath and turned towards the door. Let's just go. She was still fuming, still shooting me daggers with her eyes, but she hoisted her bag over her shoulder and stomped toward him. Right before stepping outside, she paused. Looked back at me. And then with a slow, cruel smirk, she said, I never loved you, you know. She wanted to hurt me. Wanted that to be the last thing she left me with. I should have felt something. Maybe anger. Maybe sadness. Maybe regret. But I didn't. I just smiled. Funny, I said, voice calm. Because I stopped loving you the second you opened your legs for him. Her smirk faltered. Her boyfriend grabbed her arm. Come on, he muttered, pulling her toward the car. I stepped onto the porch and watched as they climbed into his dented, scratched-up Audi. When the engine roared to life, I gave them one final wave. And then, just as they pulled out of the driveway, I said, don't forget to change the utilities to your name. Her middle finger shot out the window as they sped off. I just grinned. Then finally I stepped back inside. Silence. Stillness. For the first time in months, the house was mine again. Nate let out a low whistle, rubbing the back of his neck. Dude. That was brutal. I exhaled, shaking my head. She deserved worse. Yeah, he said, cracking a grin. But still. Damn. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, popped the cap, and took a long, slow sip. And for the first time in a long, long time. I felt good. The house felt different. Quieter. Bigger. Almost unfamiliar without the weight of her presence poisoning the air. I stood there in the empty living room, beer in hand, staring at the spot on the couch where I had caught them just days ago. The same couch I had paid for. The same couch where she had probably been laughing at me behind my back for God knows how long. But now? Now it was just mine. Nate plopped down into the armchair, stretching his legs out with a sigh. So, he said, cracking open his own beer. What's next? I rolled my shoulders, exhaling slowly. Divorce. Selling the house. Moving on. He nodded, taking a sip. Solid plan. And them. I smirked. They're not my problem anymore. At least, that's what I thought. But karma? Karma works fast. I was halfway through cleaning out my closet later that night when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But some deep, twisted instinct told me to answer. Yeah? I said, tucking my phone between my ear and shoulder as I pulled an old hoodie off a hanger. There was a pause. Then a familiar voice. Her voice. Hey. I froze. The hoodie slipped from my hands, hitting the floor. A slow, satisfied grin curled across my face. Well, I murmured. Didn't take long, did it? She sighed, long and dramatic. Can we talk? I laughed, genuinely amused. Oh, now you want to talk? She hesitated. Look, I might have overreacted earlier. I smirked. Define earlier. When you were screwing another guy? When you kicked me out of my own house? When you laughed in my face while I was packing your bags? She huffed. You don't have to be an ass about it. Oh, sweetheart, I said, leaning against the wall. I have every right to be an ass about it. She went quiet. And then, just as I expected, she cracked. Things aren't working out, she admitted, her voice softer now, almost hesitant. With him. Oh, this was too good. I didn't say anything. I wanted her to keep talking. To squirm. He's not who I thought he was, she continued. I made a mistake, okay? I almost choked on my own laughter. A mistake. She rushed on as if she could somehow fix this. I think maybe we could try again. You and me. Just talk. See where we stand. She wanted a conversation. A chance. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, soaking in the sheer audacity of this woman. Then I took a deep breath and said, very calmly, Sweetheart, I wouldn't take you back if you were the last woman on earth and the human race depended on it. Silence. Pure, beautiful silence. Then she scoffed. You're such a child. And you're a cheater who downgraded. I shot back. Go to hell, she snapped. Already been there. I married you. And with that, I hung up. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at my phone. Then I laughed. Loud. Free. God, that felt good. The next morning, I woke up to the best sleep I'd had in years. No stress. No knots in my stomach. No more wondering what lies were being whispered behind my back. Just peace. I stretched, got out of bed, and walked into my kitchen, in my house, where I was finally the only one who mattered. Coffee brewed. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and as I took the first sip, my phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I sighed, shaking my head. Let me guess. I muttered to myself. I answered, and sure enough, hey man, it wasn't her this time. It was him. I smirked, leaning against the counter. Didn't expect to hear from you. What? She dumped you already? There was a pause, then a sharp inhale. She didn't dump me. I grinned. Ah, so you dumped her. Another pause. Bingo. I laughed, taking another sip of coffee. Damn, didn't take long. Huh. He hesitated. She's not what I thought. I snorted. Oh, buddy, tell me something I don't know. I could almost see him rubbing his face in frustration through the phone. She told me I should help her get back into the house. I nearly spit out my coffee. Help her? Yeah. She said if I really cared about her, I'd help her fight for it. Said she deserved to live there more than you did. I let out a low whistle. Let me guess. You said no, and now you're the bad guy? Yeah. I shook my head, grinning. Damn. It's almost like she's a selfish, manipulative cheater or something. He let out a long breath. I should have seen it sooner. Yeah, I said, setting my coffee down. You should have. Another pause. Then, look, man. I know I screwed up. I didn't know she was still with you when we started. I laughed. A slow, deep, amused laugh. Oh, buddy. I don't care about your excuses. You knew enough. I know, really. I don't care. I leaned back against the counter. You were just a temporary distraction. And now? You're her problem, not mine. He exhaled sharply. She's crazy, man. I grinned. Yeah? And you left me for her. Silence. That was all I needed. I hung up, tossed my phone onto the counter, and let out a slow, satisfied breath. God, this just kept getting better and better. The day just kept getting better. I had officially cut her off. No money, no house, no backup plan. And now her boyfriend, the same guy she threw our marriage away for, had also realized what a disaster she was. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I spent the rest of the morning handling paperwork with my lawyer. The divorce was moving fast. No assets to split. No kids to argue over. Nothing tying us together except her last name, and soon even that would be gone. By the afternoon, I had already started listing the house for sale. New life, new start. I wasn't about to let her stains linger in my space. Then, just as I was about to leave my lawyer's office, my phone buzzed again. I sighed. What now? It was a text from an unknown number, but I knew exactly who it was. Her. You're really selling the house? I smirked. Me? You didn't think I'd keep it as a shrine to your betrayal, did you? She took a few minutes to respond. I could feel her frustration through the screen. Her, you don't have to do this. We could still talk. Maybe work something out. I actually laughed out loud in the middle of the parking lot. Me. Sweetheart. The only thing we're working out is how fast I can erase you from my life. She didn't reply. I got in my truck, drove home, and let the last of the weight slide off my shoulders. By evening, I had a beer in one hand and my feet kicked up on my couch, in my house, enjoying my peace. No drama, no games, no more lies. I was free, and damn, it felt good.